Just be glad for all you have that's in today.
Hey everyone, Connie here, and welcome to my blind reaction to episode 14 of Carole and Tuesday. Continuing to be impressive. Our first episode after the mid-season break was pretty darn good. Carole and Tuesday are moving on to the next stage of their careers, basically. Their manager, though, Gus, denied the possible contract with Brightest Records because he felt that it wasn't giving them enough freedom. So instead, they're going to try to make it on their own first to get Brightest Records to come basically crawling back to them. So they're going to be working with a legendary producer who's named Toby, and has kind of gone completely and totally insane from what we can tell. He's been living in these slums for apparently 10 years, just completely out of the public eye. And from what we see of him, he's just completely and totally mentally unstable. He's just like swinging around a fire axe, mumbling and making just completely incoherent noises. His eyes are like rolling around in the sockets, and he's just practically foaming at the mouth. Let's be honest. How the fuck does Gus think this is going to work? This guy isn't even there. He's not mentally there. He's incoherent. Unless maybe that's an act? I don't know. But I mean, it's interesting. It's exciting. It's different. Because usually in this kind of scenario where, okay, the main characters have to reach out to this eccentric guy who will help them progress further in their dream, usually the eccentric guy is just a bit of a weirdo. Not usually full-on mental. Not usually like this. So it's like they're taking it to an extreme that we don't really see. And that's interesting, because where is it going to go with that? It makes you really interested. Plus, it's interesting to think about how it's going to affect Carole and Tuesday's career, of course, which is the main focus. Now, aside from that, I have been listening to the new opening and watching it as well since last week's episode, and it's still not as good as the first opening by any means, but I've gotten more used to it. It's okay. The song is fine. The visuals are still great. I still believe that, but it's just kind of okay. It's not anything to write home about, but it's not anything bad. So yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on that now that I've seen it much more. And yeah, I'm really excited to see what more they do. I'm excited to hear what more music we get. And I really can't wait to see exactly where Carole and Tuesday's career and relationships go in this second half of the series. Because, yeah, if like I've said before, if this continues to be as good as the first half was, it could easily reach my top 3 favorite anime of all time, and possibly even #1 if it's really that good. It's very possible. But either way, we're just going to get this started now and see what this episode has in store. So when the screen fades to black, pause this redirect and go to the description below. Follow the link to the reaction, and after you watch it, come back here to the redirect and resume play. Because after it fades to black and then fades back in, everything from that point forward will be my afterthoughts and will contain spoilers to the episode. So that being said, thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you at the reaction. And we are back, and we'll begin with spoilers in 3, 2, 1, now. Okay, so there are 2 main aspects to this episode. There's quite a few things that happen, and it went between quite a lot of the different character storylines and whatnot. But there's 2 main aspects to this episode that really it focused on. The first one is, of course, the continuation of where last episode left off. Carole and Tuesday have been taken to meet the legendary producer, Toby. And he's not as insane as we initially thought. I don't know what that was. Was that an act? Like was he trying to catch them off guard? Or maybe he has just these bouts of random insanity. I don't know. Um, but instead, he appears to be just a extremely intense hard ass who's very so serious about music that he wants to. He's very judgmental about other people and their talent and whatnot. As we see in this episode, he basically says that Carole and Tuesday are shit, but that he wants to make them into the shiniest piece of shit there is. Which, jeez. um, but yeah, he legitimately wants to make them better and wants to make them the best they can be. And we see they work for hours and hours and hours doing this one song just to record the perfect take of it. And they do. They get it all handled. So that's great. That's awesome. Even if it took so long, it proves that he knows what he's doing. He is trying to get the best possible product for them. I like how we see Skip and the others come in to help them out as their backing instrumentals and whatnot. I think that's actually pretty fantastic because it had been built up. Skip, we had met him before, and he was friendly towards Carole and Tuesday before. So, did I say Tuesday? Carole and Tuesday before. So it's good to see that return, to see something come of that. That's just awesome, honestly. And this is definitely working towards getting them bigger in the spotlight. And it's definitely continuing their origin story, because that's what this show is. It is the origin story of Carole and Tuesday. It's leading up to those that miracle performance that every single episode's opening cold open is hyping up for. That the miracle 7 minutes, I think it is, that clearly the series is going to end on. The moment that changes the music landscape. And that's going to be a big deal when it does happen. So I'm excited. I'm hyped. But the second thing that this episode focused on super heavily was family. We saw Tuesday's family, and we saw that that Valerie is willing to go to pretty much any lengths, even if it means underhanded tactics and everything, which is very much a politician thing. But we see that Spencer is wholly against the idea because he actually has some ethics to him. But we see that Valerie's, I guess, campaign manager is basically telling him, if you're not being elected to office, basically shut the fuck up. You don't matter. That's basically what he told him. And Valerie basically said, I'm just going to do whatever I need to. And we saw that then there's the reporter who went to Tuesday, going in with continuing that, and he briefly talked to her about her family bond and her mother and whatnot, and basically told her family doesn't mean you're close. Family doesn't mean a true loving bond. And that's true. It doesn't. Some people have had horrible family lives, and just because they're related by blood doesn't mean that they have any obligation to stick behind them or to accept their attitudes or their ideals or whatnot. That's never been the case. So I think that's going to do. I think that this guy is going to help Tuesday out in the long run. But then we got to the second part about the family in this, and the part that I feel escalated this show much more than it already had been. Because while it did end up becoming predictable, it was so well executed and so well handled, and such a really emotional part of this series that even just thinking about it now, I'm starting to tear up. And you notice I was like getting really emotional at the end there of the episode. Now, this guy, Dan, had been a guy we met and everything, and he was pretty nice. He helped them out, and even apparently did teach Carole a Aikido move. And so I was wondering, like, okay, are we going to continue to see this guy? Is he going to continue to teach Carole Aikido? And when we first saw him in this episode, I'm thinking, like, okay, yeah, is he going to be a recurring character? Cool. But then we kind of find out the truth, and it started to become apparent at the laundromat. While there, Carole is confronted by two different couples, both of whom claim to be her long-lost parents who left her at the orphanage back when she was a baby. It's very clear from the instant they appear that neither of them are her real parents. That both couples are just doing this because of the fame and money. And it's confirmed when Carole asks them, like, or basically says, I don't have money. And it catches them off guard, the way they react, the way they try to reason it afterwards. Yeah, it's super obvious. And then while they're literally harassing her, like literally physically assaulting her, Dan comes in and saves her. And so when they're heading back to Carole's place, he basically tells her, without actually saying so, that he's her father. And instead of doing so for any selfish purposes or anything, it's very clear he's not, again, he never actually says it. She had told him before that she was left at an orphanage on Christmas, and she never knew her parents or pretty much anything about them. And in response, when they're walking to Carole and Tuesday's place, he tells her that, but he also mentions the camps and all that she was put into. And brings up information that Carole never told him, proving that it's gotta be him. As we find out that he was in trouble with the law, that he had some issues. Apparently it was self-defense, but they didn't see it that way, so he had to serve out a sentence. He was released on parole 17 years later, current day, and found out that the daughter that him and his late wife had given up had been on Mars. And he just wanted to see her. He didn't want to impose himself on her life. He didn't believe he had any right to call himself her father. And notice, again, he never actually says that while he's revealing all of this. He never once calls himself her father. He never once says that Carole is his daughter. It's obvious, of course, but he never says it. And I think that's important because it really shows what kind of person he is, and it makes Carole accept him. And Carole realizes, yeah, this man is legitimately my father. He's telling the truth. She can tell. So when he's leaving, she stops him, and she gives him a salute. She gives him a wave. Not out of, and it's like, not out of any, like, oh, good luck thing. It's basically a replacement for a hug, because she doesn't feel that she's there yet to be able to receive a hug from him or give a hug to him. She because of, the abandonment issues that she does have. But she acknowledges what he said, and she acknowledges the heart he put into what he said to her. And that's why she told him, when you're done with your sentence, when your parole is up, come back here and find me. She wants a relationship with him, but she wants to make sure that both of them are ready first. And the fact that they didn't hug, the fact that they didn't embrace like that is so important. because it definitely shows that they are not ready. Neither of them are ready to have that relationship. And that's so impressive. So many shows would instead have had Carole turn around in tears, run up to him, and embrace him in a loving hug. Probably crying out father or dad or daddy or something like that in a really emotional moment. That would have been effective. But the fact that they didn't do that, the fact that instead she just told him to promise to visit when he was done, and the fact that she gave him that little salute wave, kind of like what I do in my videos, it felt so much more real, believable, and honestly impactful because it felt real. It felt like something that, again, they weren't ready to do anything more than. And this show, it had kind of already cemented itself for me as one of my favorite anime. I didn't really have a full placement. I kind of placed it at number 3 for the time. But unless something changes, I'm just going to say it now. Unless something changes with the rest of the episodes of the second half of this series, it's almost guaranteed at this point that this is going to be my favorite show of all time. At least my favorite anime of all time, but possibly my favorite show of all time. The Legend of Korra ended many, many years ago at this point. Many years ago. And was my favorite show of all time ever since. But the fact that I am legitimately believing that this show can and likely will outrank it for me is saying something. It shows how impressive the direction, the writing, the acting, the singing, all of it is. Honestly, I don't see one real, legitimate, major flaw to this series. At all. Everything about it is so perfectly handled. There may be a couple nitpicks here and there, but that's it, and those are just nitpicks. And it's funny. Shinichiro Watanabe's other works definitely have their merits. Cowboy Bebop, Samurai Champloo, Space Dandy, all of his other works have their merits. But all of them also came across to me as kind of overrated. Cowboy Bebop, while good, very good, is nothing altogether amazing or special to me. I feel people act like it's a lot better than it is. Same with Samurai Champloo. Same with Space Dandy. But this is the one show where I might be in their shoes. Where I might be the one who is saying that this is the pinnacle of what anime can be. Where I might be the one who is saying that this is an anime you need to see. That this is iconic. Like, I've said that about other shows. I've said that about, obviously, My Hero Academia and Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood. I've said it about Miss Kobayashi's Dragon Maid. I've even said it about Death Note. But for some reason, this series has hooked me in like nothing else. This series is just so investing, so perfect that it's hard to believe it's real. It's hard to believe a series this good could exist. And anything can happen. Anything can happen. There's still quite a lot of episodes to go. There's still like 10 episodes to go. And anything can happen in those 10 episodes to make me change my mind. I fully acknowledge that. My thoughts could change. My order could change. My placement for this series could change. I don't know what's going on out there. But as of now, as of right this moment, until anything proves me otherwise, I legitimately believe this will be my favorite show of all time. And at least for now, I'm going to proclaim it as my favorite anime, beating out My Hero Academia. It's come to mean so much to me, even on a personal level. There's been a lot of things that this show has stated, a lot of messages and morals and ideas that has connected to me. Outside of just entertainment factor, this series just, it means something to me. It feels like it's important. And while anything could change, I kind of hope it doesn't. I want this show to continue to be this good, to be this meaningful, to be this impactful and powerful and emotional. It just feels like this is the series that Shinichiro Watanabe and Studio Bones were meant to make. That this series is the show that needed to happen at this time in history. And I truly believe that if this series had been getting more attention, if it hadn't been locked behind that Netflix wall for so long, it could have changed the landscape of anime as we know it. And even with the Netflix wall, it very possibly could still, if enough people still see it and enough people still realize how just breathtaking it truly is. It's everything it needs to be. Nothing it doesn't. And it just impresses me beyond measure. Tell me what you thought of this episode of Carole and Tuesday down in the comments below. And thank you so much for tuning in. For now, I'm Connie and I'm signing off. See y'all next time.
And though you've come through many obstacles,